Yo, what is up, guys? So today I am back with another YouTube video. I want to give credits before I started this to Austin the Sauce. He did make a video yesterday, a PvP tier list video, and today I'm going to give you my take on the top 7 schools in order from 1 to 7. It's going to be a little bit different, and I'm going to try to keep this as unbiased as possible. And I'll give you my reasonings for each school as I go through them. So just to preface this before I start, school top number 1, so the number 1 school and the number 7 school are very drastic in the rankings, but 2 through 6 can very easily be interchanged. I can see an argument for each school to be at a different place other than 1 and 7. And so I'm going to get right into that with that note. So number 7, I am putting Fire. Fire in PvP is just extremely weak. Not only do they have probably the worst stats in the game, but Fire themselves don't really have many options right now. With how good Oni's attrition is and the fact that pretty much most schools carry this, because of how good this spell is, Fire can't really play around OTs because even their Shad is an OT, and the way overtimes work is, for example, like let's say I'm going to use, I don't think I have a TC to show you, so I'll have to just compare. Oh wait, I do. Okay, so FFA, right? It's the same spell in main deck as it is inside, but as you can see, it is a 5-round overtime. So what that means is that damage amount that's on the card is going to be split up over 5 rounds of an OT. Meaning every single one of those 5 rounds, it's getting affected by flat damage 5 times. So for example, just purely from base damage, right? I have 124 flat res in my life, right? So if this were a direct damage Shad, it would do 1135 or 1136, right? So however much the base damage is, just minus the flat res, simple. But when this is split up over 5 rounds, so this does, about a little bit less than like 250, or a little bit more than 250 damage per round, that damage is being cut up by my flat res every time. So that's really only doing like not even 700 base damage before stats are applied, right? So the overtime getting affected by flat damage 5 times completely kills this spell. Other than that, Fire has Ifrit, which is really good, and Hierophant. But other than Ifrit and Hierophant, Fire really doesn't have any options for regular OT Fire. Trap stack Fire is extremely linear, right? So if you fight someone that doesn't have counters, you're going to smoke them. And if you fight someone that does have counters, you're going to lose. So it's really just kind of a luck of the draw. It's not really a skillful school to play no matter what strategy you're doing. If you can make OT Fire work, then good on you. But that's why I have Fire at number 7. Their stats are terrible. Just there's not a lot of options for Fire beyond that. So with that out of the way, I'm going to get into number 6. For number 6 on my tier list, I am putting the School of Storm. Kind of for the same reason as Fire, except for Storm. None of the complaints about Storm are the spells. Storm has probably one of the best Shads in the game. They do a fuck ton of damage. They have really good low pip hits for main deck. So Storm spells are not the issue. Being able to use Betrayal on a Storm is incredible. You get 2 or 3 traps on someone with that much damage, you can kill them in 1 to 2 hits. So that is not the issue for Storm. The issue for Storm is you have incredibly low resist and incredibly low HP. The resist is along with school identity, I understand. I'm not arguing that Storm should have more resist, but a slight HP buff would make sense for Storm. They run about like 8.5 most of the time, a little bit less sometimes. Maybe 9,000 for Storm would be better. If you guys have any other opinions on Storm specifically, because I don't play this school, I've never really enjoyed it. Please feel free to drop a comment. But yeah, I'm putting Storm at number 6 purely just because their HP, and in a meta where it's extremely easy to get buffs, and Storm doesn't really have any good weakness or buff counters. They have to use other schools' trap counters. That really makes Storm susceptible to taking a lot of damage, which when you have the lowest HP out of any school, you're gonna die faster, and that's just in a meta where it's just hit. Sorry, being the first to die is a big issue with that. So. Sorry, if I sound a little off, I am sick, so that explains that. Okay, so 7 Fire, 6 Storm. So number 5 through number 2 are all very competitive schools in nature. But for number 5, I'm going to put Death, when you could, like I said, you could very easily argue that Death is number 2, right? But for 5 number Death, and the main reason why is because their Oni no longer drains. As you guys know, that when 160 dropped, Death Oni was incredible. It did a fuck ton of base damage. It's really easy to set up, and you could drain. And that was Death's biggest, advantage, was being able to drain. So you could do a lot of damage and still get health back. So it's like you're healing at the same time, right? But Death no longer has that option. Death still has one of the best shads in the game, arguably the best, with Grim Reader. They still have really good spell elements now. Banshee, Wraith. I know that Vampire is really good at low level. So yeah, spells like that makes Death really strong. The only reason that they're not 4-3-2 is because there's just so many other schools with incredible advantages in PvP right now. And so I'm going to get into number 4. With number 4, I do have the School of Myth. The Myth in terms of trap and blade stacking. So Myth has always had, the best Rochambeaus. They had Betrayal and Delusion, which up until about 3 weeks ago was, their school identity. They had these, and Myth was very good. But now we're in a trap stack heavy meta, and with Myth has probably the best gen in the game, the Myth gen, and a really good Scion, which fits into Betrayal very well. Myth has the ability to trap stack and blade stack at the same time extremely well. You get really good damage on a Myth, which makes their spells even better. So that's trap and blade stack Myth. I don't really need to explain that to you. If someone is over countering trap stack, you blade stack. If they're over countering blade stack, you trap stack. The best blade counter, which is Putrefaction, gets countered by Myth extremely easy. So just for those reasons, Myth is really good, just purely from PvE. For not PvE, you have Stone Colossus, which fully spell-limited is incredible. You still have Betrayal and Delusion, which can get buffs on very easily, and you have a really good Shad and Baba Yaga. But for those of you guys who do not know, because you can't really tell, the actual Baba Yaga spell gives a Myth minion, right? That up until about I think it was with the introduction of school Arc Mastery pips, they had a minion that could heal for forever up until I think 5th age dropped. The Myth minion Satyred, right? And now it's supposed to have the Grendels Amends spell, right? The Lore Master Myth heal. But now with School Mastery pips, the Egg minion does not get School Mastery pips, but the Grendels Amends cost a School Mastery pip. So that minion does absolutely nothing, especially in a meta where minions are no longer allowed in PvP. For those of you guys who know, minion spells are not allowed. You cannot use them. In a meta where Myth is supposed to be the minion school, they still can't. And so they're losing out on damage, the trade-off utility from the actual Shad spell for the minion that is completely useless. So yeah, Myth is number 4. Myth is number 4. So we're going to get into the top 3. This is where most of the discussion is, 1, 2, and 3. I've seen some tier lists that, in my opinion, were incredibly off. So I'm going to just give my honest opinion. With number 3, I do have Balance. Pretty much because a pip management school is incredible. You have one of the best trap counters in the game with Scales. So Balance, you can't trade here. So Balance has Scales, which is incredible. You still have Hydra, which is really good. And of course, you have the broken new Nova spell. I'm going to log on my Balance just to show you that spell for those of you guys who are not aware. With the introduction of Novus, Balance got this new spell that it's kind of like a Hydra, but not really. So as you can see, it costs 2 school pips, but it gives you 1 back. So it's technically a 5 base pip spell, but you're gaining back a school pip every time you use it, above 50 HP. But the thing is, you really don't need to spam this spell. People do, but you don't have to. If you can get 2 of these off, that's sometimes 2,000 damage for 3 pips. And you can do it around the shield. There's no tri-shield that covers this, as you can see, because there's no shield other than Tower Shield that covers Balance. There's no, if you Ellie Shield, you're still getting hit by the life and the balance hit. If you Ellie Shield, you're still getting hit by, you know what I mean though, right? So there's 3 heads and there's no triple shield that covers all 3, unlike Hydra, which makes the spell incredible. And the balance head is extremely easy to buff because you can either, punishment, or you can, wind bubble, or you can magnify and buff all 3 heads. So balance is extremely strong in that regard. And you still have Gaze of Fate, which is probably also another one of the best shads, especially with how much damage balance can get now. Gaze of Fate does a lot of damage, on top of the fact that you still have Burn, which being able to pip control is probably the biggest advantage that Balance has. And if you don't spam burn, you have balance, the balance scion, which is incredible, does about 2,000 base. So you can absolutely slap someone with this, and TC Sabertooth is really good as well. So balance still has a lot of options, as you can see, but they are number 3 because number 1 and number 2 are extremely strong in PvP, and this is where a lot of the debate comes. So for number 2, I am putting the School of Ice. You guys can say it's biased, but I'm going to get into the reasoning why. So the only reason, single-handedly, the only reason that Ice is so high is because of this spell right here. Spellamented, when Spellamented, Colossus gives you 3 plus 65% ice traps. So basically ice feints without the, the 20 trap on yourself. But the biggest issue, in my opinion, with this spell is the traps go on before the hit. So, for example, if the other person is wide open and you use this spell, you're getting a 65% buffed Colossus, which is already going to do a lot, and then it's going to leave 2 traps on the other person. Meaning, if that person were to try to Rochambeau those shields off, you're not getting the full value, opposed to if the traps, not only are the 65 traps absurd, the percentage-wise, but if they go on after the hit, you're getting a full, the person on defense is getting a full value out of those Rochambeau traps. So it's just way easier to counter. With how it is right now, it's completely unbalanced. I believe the devs are aware of how unbalanced this is and are eventually going to fix it. Don't hold your breath. It's still the Wiz devs. But yeah, this spell is extremely, extremely unbalanced and needs to be changed. Ice does have one of the best shads, and they have the best stats in the game. Pretty much without argument, the best stats, because you get 78 resist, 150 damage, perfect accuracy, 38 pierce, just pretty much everything except healing, for the most part, that Ice can get at max, which makes them the number 2 best school. So for number 1, and I swear I'm not being biased, I am putting Life at number 1. A lot of you guys who are constantly PvPing know how strong Life is right now. I've repeated it in all of my videos, how good Life is right now. You don't even have to heal. So we're in a trap stack meta, right? And Life has arguably the 2 best trap counters of the game. Oni's Naturalism gives you 55 blades upon using, so you get 355 blades if you take off 3 traps. And then Tranquility, which is probably the craziest one out of all of them. So for example, I'll explain what it does. So let's say I have 90 outgoing right now because of my mostly from my pens. If I use this Tranquility spell on 3 traps, unbuffed, meaning no healing blade, no healing aura, no healing bubble, this heal does about 1700 heal, which is ridiculous because not only are you taking off 3 traps, you can heal off basically whatever incoming hit you're about to take by just countering the traps. So Tranquility is insane, on top of the fact that Life got a buff with both of their shads, so now Wings of Fate does the same amount of damage as it did healing. The healing was what it was now over 3 rounds before, but now it is over 5 rounds, which looks like kind of a nerf because of how I explained the fire shad earlier, but you do not do Wings of Fate for damage, right? It does damage. It does about 2,000 with a damage bubble up, which is incredible, but having 5 rounds of shield breakers is incredible if you're trying to play around for a hungry caterpillar. So for example, if you get 255 blades up, you win bubble, which is pretty easy to do on a Life, and you get 2 shads, which again is really easy to do if you run the right gear because you get incredible shadow rating. You can literally just wings into a caddy, and you're threatening 5,000 damage no matter how they decide to defend it. A weakness, change bubble, brace, no matter what, you're pretty much guaranteed up to 5,000 damage from just those 2 hits. On top of the fact that you're healing up probably 2.5 to 3,000 off playing offensive moves, so you don't even need to Satyr anymore. You can just hit. Life got probably one of the best spellments in the game. With Goat Monk, if you have a max tier, I do not, but as you can see, it does a stupid amount of damage and a really good heal, and it's protected heal, so it counters some schools that like to steal heals or stuff like that. So this should be no surprise. I understand that some people do not like playing Life or don't like playing against it just because it slows down the meta, but you really don't have to play slow, and I would like to preface this again by saying I do not condone anyone going to matches and not hitting. As you guys have heard, people are getting banned for doing that. So do not play the life school and try to just abuse the healing and abuse, you know, the timer. And by spam clicking, do not do that. I'm telling you right now, you will get muted, banned, suspended, some kind of infraction. The devs are watching now. I believe it's possibly because the videos I've been making have been getting really good traction, and I've seen a lot more lives flooding the queue. But I'm just warning all of you now, before you try to play life, do not abuse healing, because you will get suspended, some kind of, you know, action taken against your account. Playing normal life, doing damage, killing all your opponents is perfectly allowed. It is how devs want to see you play the game. I've had direct conversations with devs about my actual strat, saying that everything I'm doing is good. You're supposed to be able to kill opponent, and life's supposed to be able to heal, right? You're supposed to be able to heal. You're supposed to be able to mix healing and doing damage. But if you go too far to one end, you'll either lose the match or you will just straight up get an action taken. So be careful again. If any of you guys have any questions or comments on my tier list, if you want to give me your own tier list, please feel free to comment on this video. My Discord and my Twitter, as always, are in the description of the video. Feel free to join my Discord. I will post the link there. Add me on Discord. I love talking to you guys, and I will see you guys in the next one.